All right, we're coming back in three, two, one.
And this is America's Heroes Group. I'm Cliff Kelly, and wonderful November. We have to remember this. November is Bone Marrow Donor Assessment Month, not assessment, awareness month, and we want to make sure everybody knows that. So this is very important. And on November 16th, I'm the host, Cliff Kelly. Executive producer is Glenda Smith. Our digital media producer is Manny Corazari, and we are so pleased now today to have in our studio our guest, Representative Will Davis, the Honorable Representative from the Illinois State House, District 30. He's from the 30th District, and he's also the Democratic Assistant Majority Leader. And we're so pleased to have him. How you doing, sir?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me today.
It's a pleasure to have you.
Pleasure to be here.
Everything all right?
Yeah, everything is good. Just moving right along.
You just heard the lady who takes care of our taxes, and she does a very good job of it, as you know. You just had recent town hall property tax reform.
I sure did.
Yeah, tell us about that.
Well, I have a bill in the Illinois House sponsored in conjunction with the Cook County Assessor Fritz Kagi, who came in to office promising reform, transparency, and he feels that there's a need for a piece of legislation to try to help give him the tools that he needs to do what he has to do with regard to the assessment portion of the process to levy property taxes. So his bill is a data modernization bill. He's felt that he needs to be able to collect appropriate data on income producing properties, commercial properties, in order to do a better job of making sure that the assessments are appropriate. I think particularly those of us in the south suburbs know that when you think about the assessed valuation of our home, it's nothing near or even close to what the actual resale value of our home was. It's much higher.
Okay.
So he feels that in order to better make decisions, at least on the commercial side and the income producing side of this equation, he needs to be able to collect more appropriate data. And we have a bill in Springfield that we didn't get through in the first half of the session this year. We'll be bringing it back in the second half to try to make sure that we are collecting appropriate data. Unfortunately, one of the groups that's against it are the big property managers downstairs. We've seen too many stories of how they're underassessed and that they're not really paying their fair share of the property tax burden across the county. And so they are adamantly opposed to this bill because I think they like the fact that they don't pay as much in property taxes as they should, not being assessed appropriately. So, and then they're among other groups like the Illinois Realtors Association is opposed to it, which I'm not quite sure why, because I would like to think as realtors, you want the best information available so that when you're trying to sell homes, you're actually letting people know what their property tax burden is going to be.
Sure.
Not any smoke and mirrors with it. Among the retail merchants, they don't like the bill. A wide variety of groups don't like it. But so we didn't have the success we wanted to in this first half of the General Assembly session this year. But we're going to bring it back, and I know we'll get a bill passed very soon.
Did you get to a roll call?
No.
You didn't get to it. You knew, but yeah.
Well, we knew
okay.
better,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
so I said,
ironically
yeah.
enough, Cliff, and the way that I like to operate in Springfield, I know bills are controversial and people like bills, they don't like bills. But I'm all about let's put the vote out there. If enough
Sure.
people don't
Sure
vote for it, then they
Right.
just don't vote for it. Unfortunately, I wasn't even given the opportunity to get a vote out of committee. We think we could have gotten it out of committee.
Which committee?
It was in the Revenue Committee.
Okay.
The Revenue Committee. We think we could have gotten it out of the committee, but unfortunately, the powers that be did not even let the bill come up for a vote in committee. And if it had died in committee, it would have died. It doesn't mean we would have gone away. We'd have brought it back.
Sure, and you would have known who was where.
Who's where, and
Yeah.
if we got to the floor, we would have asked for another vote. If it passed, great. If it didn't, then again, we know where people are and we know what we need to do to start trying to change the view on this issue.
Well, in addition to that, Representative Davis, you do a great job for your people, and for the state, and people ought to know what's out there
Right.
and how the vote's going. Whether it passes or not.
Whether it passes or not. And,
Right.
and again, I want to applaud the assessor who kind of decided, let me go out and spread the word about this. So he's been doing, he did a variety of town hall meetings. I hosted one for him out in the South Suburbs at South Suburban College to give him an opportunity to sell what he'd like to sell, but also for residents who have questions about property taxes, just to give them the opportunity to ask their questions. And he stayed an hour and a half after the event was supposed to end.
That's great.
To answer questions of the residents. I mean, he's being as transparent as he can, and let me just do my best to try to answer those questions. But in the meantime, until we get to a point where we're able to collect all the right data that we need, we're still kind of stuck in the same way of doing assessments that we've been doing. An effort to try to help this overall conversation about property taxes, possibly lowering property taxes. In the budget we passed under the new governor, we created a task force on property tax relief.
Great.
And unlike many task force that ever take place in the General Assembly, where you have a few appointments from each of the chambers and each side of the aisle, so you might have maybe 12, maybe 15 people. There are 90 members who decided to sign up for this particular task force.
My goodness.
So we had 90 members.
That shows you the interest in this policy,
Well, hopefully the interest is
well,
there.
yeah, that's right, because it may be, you're right,
Right.
we don't know why they're there.
We don't know why
Yeah,
they're there
that's
in some
right.
cases.
Yeah.
And I was asked to chair one of the subcommittees.
Okay.
So I chaired the subcommittee on assessments and exemptions as well, just so we can examine that particular piece of the puzzle as it relates to ultimately getting to the point where we hopefully can pass some legislation that will improve property taxes in some areas. Now, one thing that we did do, and I want to highlight this, is that when we passed the education funding reform bill a couple years ago that I chaired in the House, I was a House sponsor of that bill. We created a property tax relief grant for school districts. So school districts that are in what we would call Tier 1, which are the neediest of the school districts, can apply for not a dollar for dollar swap, but I think it's about a 75 cent to a dollar swap, if they're willing to rebate taxes back to their local taxpayers. So that's something that was really unique in the bill that is not talked about a lot, but even in education funding, we created a mechanism to try to help various communities with their property taxes by creating this grant. So we put $50 million in the pot the first time. We put another $50 million in the pot. So we're giving school districts want to rebate taxes back to their residents. And many of the school districts that qualify, believe it or not, are out in the South Suburbs. So people who are listening who live in the South Suburbs, talk to your superintendents, talk to your school board members, and ask them, did they apply for the relief grant? But if they do, it's a 75 cent on a dollar swap where we're asking them to give back taxes to their residents. And instead of those taxes, those dollars going away from the district, the state is replenishing those dollars, something that we have not done ever before. We attempted to do it several years ago in our first iteration of school funding reform, and this is going back to 2003, 2004, when I first came in the office to try to do something like a swap. It wasn't successful, but this time we actually had some success with it. So while it doesn't affect all school districts, but it does affect the neediest of the school districts, and many of those are in the South Suburbs.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That is great. We are so pleased to have Representative Will Davis with us from the 30th District. Our call-in number here on America's Heroes Group is 312-374-8130. If you have a question or a comment, we'd be happy to entertain it, of course. And I want to talk to the Representative Davis, who does such a great job. The mayor visited you folks.
She sure did. And we were happy to have her.
I know that.
We were happy to have her.
I know you were, sure. Tell us what happened.
Well, I know how it's being portrayed, like she, I won't say, I'll stop short of saying she failed, but one thing that we do is that we appreciate her coming down and actually having this face-to-face dialogue with members. And I think what we all walk away from that is that there's always a need to talk and to communicate, not just when it's at that moment. Leading up to that moment is extremely important as well. So I know one of the things, there were two issues that I believe, in particular issues that she really wanted to try to get accomplished. One was she wants permission to allow the city council to examine a real estate transfer tax. So while we wouldn't impose the tax in Springfield, but we would authorize or give authorization to the Chicago City Council to examine it. Then they can decide whether they wanted to do it or not. And then she also was looking for some changes on what is called the rate structure or reconciliation payments on the casino side of things. That's something that she feels would help to finance. Well, I won't say finance, but something that she would help for those who want to finance a Chicago casino. It would help them with regard to some of the payments that they have to make once they have that facility in operation. And ironically enough, her changes would have impacted every casino, or at least all the new ones that are coming online, which includes the south suburbs. And that was what I tried to convey to the mayor, is that I wasn't in any way trying to stand in the way of making that change, particularly since a south suburban casino would benefit from those changes as well. But for many of us on the outside looking in, when we think about Chicago, we often talk about the tourism that takes place in Chicago. 3 million people, 11 million tourists. So when you're talking about where to put a casino, her initial study included 5 locations, but none of them in what I call the downtown area. Nothing between McCormick Place and Navy Pier. The closest was Mercy Hospital, which is on the south side of Navy Pier. So for many of us, why didn't you look at any of the downtown locations? When she talked to us, she talked about cooperation, being partners. And because I represent the south suburbs, I want to be a partner with the city of Chicago.
Sure.
But for me, being a partner meant that if you feel, because of your position in this, the fact that the revenue from the Chicago casino would be the bulk of the dollars that would help fund the capital bill that we just passed. So we have a lot of reasons to want a Chicago casino. But in our opinion, or many of us in our opinion, when you didn't look downtown, in our opinion, you weren't maximizing the opportunity. Because we think that if between McCormick Place and Navy Pier, if that's where the tourists are, that's, I think, what we want to attract for a Chicago casino. Not that those of us that live in the city wouldn't want to go by there. Maybe if we're going to spend an evening downtown, hey, let's stop by the casino and, play some 21 or something like that while we're going to a show and going out to dinner. But I think the real attraction for that are the conventioneers that come to the city, as well as the tourists that come to the city.
Sure.
But we didn't study a location in Chicago determine where would be the best location to maximize the financial opportunity. And that's where many of us pushed back, if I can say it that way.
Yeah, right.
Because we felt that there
Because
was a need.
she hasn't done that.
Well, she hasn't done that.
Okay.
At least, and I'll say not yet. Maybe she'll
Yeah, right,
consider
right.
it now. So
You all made it very clear that that's what you would like to see.
That's important.
Yeah.
And ironically enough, one of the locations, at least in her original study, feasibility study, was Harborside. Out in about 110th, 111th down to Bishop Ford where the golf course is. Well, we feel that if that was ever the most viable place for it, it would certainly hurt the South Suburban Casino, because at that point we're trying to capture the folks that live south that are right now driving over to Indiana. And she commented on that. So 2 facilities that close, trying to capture the same population of people driving over to Indiana, that would be a challenge for us, in our opinion, a definite challenge. So we just really wanted her commitment to say, we're going to look at a downtown location other than what she feels is downtown, which is Mercy Hospital.
Yeah.
We feel it should be
That just
in the
doesn't
box.
make a lot of sense.
But I represent the south suburbs. I'm not a Chicago representative, so I have to look out for the best interest of folks that I represent out in the south suburbs.
Sure.
And if we're working in partnership, then why would a facility be any further south than downtown, and which could have an impact on what we're trying to do in the south suburbs? So, I mean, it was great to have her down there. We had some dialogue. And then the other thing that I'm really trying to bring the mayor around on is the third airport. We still feel the third
okay,
airport is
yeah.
a viable project, something that will not only enhance the south suburbs, but I'm sure will enhance the south side of Chicago. So again, if we're talking about partnership, working together, then I need to get her to not be the leader of the airport. She's got Chicago, she's got O'Hare, she's got Midway. We're not trying to hurt either of those facilities by developing a third airport. We're trying to find something that benefits us.
What's the airport out there now, Will?
There is none out there. Well,
That
there's a
used to be-
small one called Bolt. I think it's Bolt Field. It's a
Sure,
very
yeah,
small
I know
one
there
out
was
there,
something out there.
and that would be kind of the basis of beginning to
That's
build
what I
a
was
third
wondering, yeah.
a third airport. But it's a very small field, small runway, very little plane traffic. You know,
there's
other
been a
than
lot
maybe
of talk about that for some time. You do need it, I'm sure.
right. So we
It would
we
benefit.
really need her to have a conversation with us about
Yeah.
it, so we can show the benefit and what that airport adds to the region. If we're talking about partnership, if we're talking about working together, I can assure her that we're not trying to hurt the two existing airports. We're trying to do
No, of course
nothing
not.
but add to and enhance our region's air capacity.
This is America's Heroes Group. I'm Cliff Kelly, and having a great conversation with Representative Will Davis, who does a great job as the representative in the State House in the 30th District. And if you have a comment or a question, our number is 312-374-8130. Tell me about the relationship that you folks have, and I'm talking about your group, of course, and people that you represent. The governor.
Well, we were happy to have a new governor.
Of course. Right.
People ask the question, how is it? And I say it's much better. The conversations are there. What we are still working with the governor on is, again, the governor himself is not necessarily on board with the airport. Now, he would argue he gave us some capital money to create an interchange off the expressway that leads into the property of what would be the third airport. But I've heard him say at a luncheon, I don't want to hurt Chicago. Again, we're not trying to hurt Chicago in doing so. So in the same manner that I've asked the mayor to sit down so we can show her the benefits of this third airport, ask the same thing of the governor. Sit down with us. Give us an hour to show you the benefit that this airport adds. So when you're talking about the money you're spending, you're not saying, well, we don't want to hurt Chicago, because what's going to start happening is that if we don't move forward on this soon, then what people are just going to say, we wasted $160 million on the interchange for an airport that the governor doesn't
It
even
goes
want,
nowhere,
that could have
right.
gone somewhere else. So we need the governor to come around on this. So I appreciate it. I've had an opportunity to talk to him and work with him. He seems to certainly understand some of the challenges that we have in underserved communities. He's done some great things to try to help, help create some opportunity in some of those underserved communities by directing some resources and having some dollars available specifically for communities as such. But again, and that's just one thing. The airport is just one thing, but this is still an important thing to us in the south suburbs. And so we're working hard to get him to sit down and have the conversation. We've told his people that we need to have this conversation. And even in dealing with Springfield, it's not a matter of if I don't get my meeting, I won't support the things that he wants to support.
Sure,
I mean, I'm
of
going to
course,
evaluate
right,
and make
yeah.
sure they're good things overall,
Certainly.
but it may get to that point where they're going to be asking for me to vote on some pretty serious issues. And I'm be like,
Oh,
well,
yeah.
where's my
Yeah,
conversation?
quid pro quo,
I've
yeah.
asked,
Yeah.
I've made the request to have this opportunity. And if he can't find time to sit down with not even just me, just the people, our experts on that issue, if he can't find time to sit down, then I don't know how I'm going to start feeling about some of the things that he wants to do. I have to push back like that. I don't have any choice
Of course,
but to
that's
push back
politics.
like that.
That's
That's the
right.
nature of what we do. So he needs to understand that and appreciate while he's done some great things, there's still a lot of great things yet to be done, and he's got to engage us on getting those things done.
One of the things that I'm sure a lot of people are talking about, Representative Will Davis, is the marijuana situation.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, as well as it should. What I hear is not good relative to the African American community.
Well, and where I would certainly agree with that, because we know one of the things it's going to take to get into this business is money.
Exactly.
And while we do have some very prominent African American people out there that probably have access or can get access to the type of dollars we're talking about, it's just not their interest. in
Well,
terms of
let
being
me
in
say
this
this
business.
just quickly, and then then you please continue. When they came up with the medical dispensaries, I happened to meet a gentleman of color, great guy, just had the money, had everything he needed, which is the problem with most. As you just pointed out, the money that's needed. But he found a place in the southeast side, which was good. But he needed only thing he needed to get it was a zoning change, and the local people came in at the zoning hearing and blocked it.
I
Said
see.
we don't want them selling drugs to our kids. I mean, hey,
Right.
what's your son doing tonight?
Kids are getting access to it
Yeah,
anyway in some cases.
exactly.
Right.
But this is something that was going to be legal,
Mhm.
and he was the only person of color that had. Because you got to really do a lot of things to get,
Right.
and you should have to do that. But to be blocked by the community,
By the local
yeah,
community. Well, we know that there was a recent lottery on
yeah,
on
that's what I
selecting
wanted to ask you about.
locations
Right.
for, particularly in the city of Chicago. We do have some suburban communities that are passing resolutions or ordinances to opt out of it altogether, that they don't want it sold within their boundaries at all, and that's fine. That is indeed their choice, and the position that, or at least when I talk to people, I'm going, don't say no just yet. I think my mother used to say, don't cut off your nose, spite your
But your
face.
right.
You don't have to walk into that conversation saying no. You can review, study, at least be informed. Be informed about it first, and then if it ultimately is not the best thing you think, then fine, you can
That's
be a
right.
no, but don't just have a knee-jerk reaction because of what it is,
Yeah.
and be a no on the front end. I was speaking out in the south suburbs, and to it was the Township Democratic meeting that I was speaking at, and we were talking a little bit about this, and I said, well, why don't you start with yes and work your way backwards to no, instead
That's
of
a good
starting
point.
with no
Yeah.
and have to work your way up to yes. Walk into it. I mean, it's just something.
point.
It's revenue for a community.
Sure.
It's good revenue for a community if you decide you want to do it. If you decide you want to be able to sell it within your limits, we give very broad latitude to local jurisdictions to regulate it the way they feel it needs to be regulated. But it's revenue.
I guess probably Representative Davis, one of the major problems here is the feds, with the federal government still saying that it's illegal.
Right.
Yeah, that's because even the places that are selling it in other places as legal, they've got all kind of things they have to be careful about, where they're going to bank, where they're going to do this.
Well, it's interesting because remember, Illinois is not the first state.
Yeah,
So other
right.
states have
Yeah.
tackled the
Exactly.
issue of the federal government
Exactly.
and how the federal government feels about it. So that's something we didn't have to
Right.
create the wheel on, so to speak.
Exactly.
Others have done it. But like banking, again, one of the things that we can do here is you can, the right group of individuals can charter a state bank,
True. Yeah.
which does not have to be regulated by the feds.
True.
So there are mechanisms here. Again, if somebody's got the resources and is willing to, kind of look beyond what we would call the stigma of this and really examine it, I think there are opportunities, a lot of opportunities for them, regardless of who you are. And, while we want this to be impactful to minority communities, impactful to black communities, it's kind of wherever you were. It was funny. I was in Pontiac, Illinois, a week ago, and I was talking to a group of agriculture students down there. And a couple of students asked about this, and I said, well, okay, you're ag students, so, hey, you guys probably know how to grow the best stuff ever because you're ag students.
Sure. Right. Exactly.
But I said it's a business opportunity. It's an opportunity. And again, when you think about all the derivatives of it that you could possibly be selling, I said, who in here bakes well? A couple of young ladies said, I bake well. I was like, well, what about taking grandma's lemon bar recipe and adding a little something to it?
Yeah.
And now you've got an edible.
This is what I used to say. It's funny you say that, Will, because I used to say that. I did a little work for a group some time ago that was talking about pot long before, where we are now. And some people said, well, yeah, Cliff smokes pot. I said, no, that's not true. And if I did partake I wouldn't smoke it because I don't think taking hot gas into your lungs is a very smart thing.
Mm-hmm.
Eat it. Everybody respond.
I mean, it's an opportunity.
That's right.
And,
That's
and
what you want to
and
do.
the thing about it is that it doesn't take anybody. Like for instance, I don't partake.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah.
But if somebody
Yeah,
else wants to,
sure, whatever.
that's on them to
That's
do
what
so.
you used to say. Whatever stirs your grits.
Right,
you
right.
know?
Whatever that is, float your boat,
Yeah,
melt your butter,
Yeah.
whatever that is, it's up. They can make that decision,
Yeah.
but let's look at it for the opportunity it is. Again, starting at yes and working your way backwards to no might be the best way to at least try to examine it. Particularly if I'm a local alderman or trustee in a town and I'm trying to make this decision.
Yeah.
Examine it the right way first.
The Honorable Will Davis, Illinois State House, 30th District. You want to give your number real quick?
My office number is area code 708-799-7300. I'm located at Central 175th and Dixie Highway in East Hazel Crest. Again, I'm the representative of the 30th District,
Right.
30th District,
Understand.
Assistant Majority Leader in the House.
Beautiful.
Cliff, thank you very much for having me.
And